I'm going to do a reading from Seed to Civilization, The Story of Man's Food by Charles B. Heiser Jr., published in 1973. I'm going to read from Chapter 7, The Starchy Staples, on bananas. Many people who think of the banana only as a dessert fruit may be surprised to find it included with the staples. In many parts of the tropics, particularly in East Africa, it is the principal food of various peoples. Of the 20 million tons of bananas produced annually, only about 15% enters the world trade, the remainder being consumed locally. About one half of the bananas are eaten raw in the way familiar to us, and about one half are eaten cooked as a vegetable. The dessert or sweet banana is sometimes cooked, but most cooking bananas are starchy rather than sweet and are referred to as plantains or cooking bananas. The banana had its origin in southeastern Asia, many in the Malay region. Our earliest record is an account from India in 500 BC, but it is generally assumed that the banana is a much more ancient crop, the exact age of which is unknown. Wild bananas have relatively small fruits with many hard seeds and probably were not a particularly attractive food to man. Other parts of the wild plants may have been eaten more frequently: the large underground part or corm, the shoots, and the large male bud, as they still are in some places in the tropics. The leaf stalk also may have been used by primitive man for its fibers. Thus, other parts of the plant were probably much more important to man until there was a genetic change that led to seedless fruits. Man was fortunate to discover such a plant, and the plant, of course, now had to depend upon man for its spread, and there was selection for increased size and improved flavor as time went along. Seedlessness in banana derives from both parthenocarpy, or the development of fruit without pollination, and sterility. The species that is ancestral to our domesticated bananas is Musa acuminata, which still exists in the form of numerous races in southeastern Asia. At some time, this species hybridized with another, Musa balbisiana. Today, some of our cultivated bananas are quote-unquote pure Musa acuminata, and others contain one or two chromosome sets from Musa balbisiana. An important event in the development of the edible banana was the addition of a chromosome set to the normal diploid set. Such triploids, derived from crosses of diploids and tetraploids, are more productive and vigorous than diploid bananas, and are also rather highly sterile and quite variable, giving man some superior plants to choose from. Today, most of our bananas are triploids, although some diploids and a few tetraploids are cultivated. From southeastern Asia, the banana reached Africa at about the beginning of the Christian era, along with several other food plants. Some have thought that the introduction of these plants led to a population explosion in Africa at this time. The plant was first heard of in Europe from a report of Alexander the Great, and Pliny wrote that it was the plant of wise men. Hence, one of Linnaeus's name for the banana, Musa sapientum, quote-unquote, of the wise men. Another Linnaean name formerly used was Musa paradisiaca, for the plant was thought to have been regarded as the tree of paradise or the tree of knowledge among some people. From Africa, the banana was carried to the Americas in 1516 and became so well established in a short space of time that some of the early travelers thought it was an indigenous American plant. From Africa, too, came the name banana. The modern history of bananas began in the last half of the past century when schooners began carrying bananas from Central America. One of the most significant events occurred in 1871 when a railroad was built in Costa Rica. Looking for something for his railroad to carry, the builder, the American magnate Minor Cooper Keith, began banana plantings in that country 3 years later. In 1899, the Keith interests and the Boston Fruit Company merged to form the United Fruit Company, which was to become dominant in the banana industry. In the first years of this century, refrigerated ships began to operate and bananas started to come to the United States with some regularity. The United States now imports more than any other country, half of the total of the world's exports, most of them coming from Central America. In the early years, Honduras and Costa Rica were among the world's leading exporters, but when a fungus disease destroyed many of the commercial plantings in Central America, the small South American Republic of Ecuador became the world's chief exporter, a position that it has held until recently. The Central American countries are now growing varieties resistant to disease, and although many people do not find their flavor as pleasing as that of the older variety, they are now supplying most of the export trade, and Ecuador has lost its former position. Since bananas had become the principal export crop of Ecuador, its whole economy was threatened. Footnote: since some have pointed out that in the United States, cereals were stored in granaries while much of the world went hungry, it might also be mentioned that bananas have been known to rot in coastal Ecuador while some people in the highlands of the country went hungry. Similar examples could be drawn from many countries. The banana not only comes in one of the neatest and most convenient packages of all our food plants, but it is also one of our best energy sources. Its nutritive value is very similar to that of the white potato, although in the dessert varieties, more of the carbohydrate is in the form of sugar. The average person would need to eat about 24 bananas a day if they were his sole source of calories. Bananas contain considerable amounts of a substance called serotonin that may be slightly poisonous, and Peary has written that, quote, dependence on them as the main source of energy would be inadvisable, end of quote. But in parts of the world, man does use them as his principal food source. The banana plant, contrary to popular notion, is not a tree. The trunk of the banana is not woody, and it is not even a stem, but consists of the leaf stalks. It also may surprise some people to learn that the fruit is classed as a berry. The plant is a perennial herb, the aerial portions arising from a corm. The pseudostem produces a bunch of bananas and then is removed or eventually dies naturally, but side shoots or suckers from the same corm continue to grow, and stems from these will produce bunches of bananas in the following seasons. Suckers or corms are used for propagation. In a sense, the plant is immortal, although in practice, most banana plantations are started anew after 5 to 20 years. Some, however, have been known to remain in production up to 100 years. The banana is for the most part a tropical crop. It needs considerable warmth and water with adequate drainage. Some bananas, however, are produced in relatively dry subtropical areas, usually under irrigation. The plant needs little attention other than pruning to remove unwanted suckers. The plant is fairly taxing of the soil, and clean cultivation or removal of all weeds in the plantation, which tends to promote erosion, is no longer recommended. Only a few of the some 300 varieties of bananas ever reached the United States, and by far the most common in the past was the variety Gros Michael. The varieties known as Valerie and Cavendish, more resistant to some diseases, have now largely replaced it. Other varieties are known that are better tasting, but unfortunately they don't ship as well as those previously named. Bananas are cut while quite green, even for local use in the tropics, where the sweet types are allowed to ripen in a shady place near the house to be used as needed. Fruit intended for export is ripened under carefully controlled conditions, and ethylene is sometimes used to hasten the process. Although more than 90% of the bananas grown are used directly for food, several products are made from the remainder. A banana flour or powder may be produced. In the primitive method of drying the fruits for flour, the bananas were placed in heaps on mats over a mixture of cow dung and water and covered with leaves. Modern methods involve slicing the bananas and drying them artificially. Candies or various confections are made by splitting and drying the bananas. Sliced dried bananas are used as banana chips. A beer for local consumption is made from bananas in parts of Africa. Other parts of the plant are sometimes used for food. The leaves are often employed for wrapping. The thick, waxy covering of the leaf makes it an ideal, quote-unquote, wax paper, or for, quote-unquote, plates, and at times for emergency umbrellas. The leaf fiber of the banana is of no commercial importance, but other species of the genus have valuable fibers. Musa textilis, commonly known as abaca or manila hemp, which looks very much like a banana but whose fruit is inedible, produces a very strong fiber in the leaf stalk and is used to make high-grade cordage. It is one of the principal exports of the Philippines and became well established in tropical America during World War II and was grown widely in Central America on banana plantations devastated by disease. Scientific breeding work with the banana has been carried out for over half a century, nearly all of it in Trinidad. Much of the early work was necessarily concerned with learning as much as possible about the plant. Seeds are required for breeding work, and fortunately, most edible bananas will produce seeds, although in very small numbers, if pollinated. Only a start has been made in an attempt to breed new improved varieties.